You guys ain't supposed to see this. It's like the trick of the trade. Y'all ain't supposed to see that trick. Can you help me, man? Thank you. All right, good morning. Yeah. It's good to be back. It's like I haven't seen y'all in a long time. Before I get started, I want to do a little bit about the Graceful Parenting Conference. Can I put a plug in? We got some of our own folks stepping up. Mike, of course, will be there, and Lisa McCoy will be there, and Sharon Bethke will be there. I'll be there. There'll be several folks there that you recognize, and our commitment at Stronghold is to try to bring a grace-based approach, a faith-based, grace-based approach to what it means to be a parent in this day and age, and what kids need, and how kids are different now than they were when we were younger or our parents were younger. I think we got a good batch of topics to talk about and a way to encourage every one of you, whether you're single parent, mom and dad, grandparents raising kids, divorce, whatever. We need you to come in, and we want to encourage you. My wife, when I started doing parenting conferences, one of the things she asked me was to not be one of those presenters that put a load on parents. As she was talking with a mom who went to a parenting conference and was juggling 4 kids and went to this conference at this church and didn't finish the conference. It was a 2-day deal because she felt like the speakers put more stuff on. This conference is going to be about also lightening your load, trying to get you to look at the essentials, what's important, and then focusing on that. So we want to invite you. Both Hope and Stronghold want to invite you. So the moment of the day, I was thinking about this. Let's see if I can get this to work. I was thinking about this subject and where I want to go today. I want to look at the passage in this new series, Plain Talk. And I'm first up. The title they have there is Turn the Other Cheek. The title you see is Love Does. And at the end of the teaching today, you'll hear a song that seemed to inspire, where I stole the title from, actually. But I want to read the verses because it's really important stuff. I'm reading out of Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 30. It says this: "But if you're willing to listen, I say love your enemies. Do good to those that hate you. Pray for the happiness of those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other cheek. If someone demands your coat, offer your shirt also. Give what you have to anyone that asks for it. And when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back." I was thinking about this passage because it's sandwiched in between my favorite passage, which is the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes was a series that Mike preached when we first started. And I'm wondering if I can are there anybody here? Now this will age some of you, so some of you might not want to stand up. But about 15 years ago, there was about 60 of us that showed up here for the first time. And I'm wondering if there are folks that showed up for the first time that Sunday or a couple Sundays after. Stand up, would you? Stand up, please, please. Oh, they're still here. There's still a few of them. Okay, so I was thinking about us, those folks who creeped over here, got together at Mike's house that week, that midweek, and we had this fervent meeting, and then we gathered here, and the Lord just opened things so that we'd end up here at O'Gorman. And I'm going to tell you that first 50 of us, motley, ugly crew of people, right? We had Gary Milner, who led the music with a guitar and a box and a jukebox up here by himself, stomping and singing and doing the whole thing by himself. But we were glad to be here. And I was thinking about that passage. I was thinking about the teaching. And what happens is in Luke, Jesus delivers the Beatitudes, and he says some things about what love does. He tells us, first of all, love pursues the broken and ragamuffin. Love pursues the hungry and the thirsty. Love pursues the wretched and the outcast. And I was thinking about those folks, and I won't tell you the whole story, but those folks who stood up, I think I nailed it, didn't I? We felt like that. We felt like broken ragamuffins, hungry and thirsty for the word and for grace, and wretched and outcast because of some of the circumstances. But that was church stuff. Some of you are here because you feel broken and like a ragamuffin. There's a book, I use ragamuffin because I really like, there's a book by Brennan Manning called The Ragmuffin's Gospel. And it's a little bitty paperback that lays out for you grace. And so if you ever want something interesting to read, you won't be able to put it down. But we were and are, I see, still in front of me. Now I want to have everybody stand up, please, real quick. You got just an exercise. We're going to do a little Richard Simmons this morning. And look around. There's a bunch of ragamuffins sitting next to you, man. And that's the kind of people God love pursues. Sit down. So in the Beatitudes, the disciples were hearing for the first time. He had spoken to the 12 he had appointed as apostles. And then he said, I'm going to go out to this clearing by the sea, and I'm going to talk to these people. And early in his ministry, he was doing miracles, and there was a swell of people that came to hear him. And he delivered the best sermon ever delivered. And when he opened his mouth, out of his mouth fell those words. Blessed are you if you're broken, if you're a ragamuffin. Blessed are you if you're hungry, if you're thirsty. Blessed are you if you're wretched, if you're an outcast. And I got to tell you, some people had to be appalled. But that's what love does. Love also distinguishes now from then. I'm going to go through this quick. So love, as Christ was describing it, says that blessed are you who now are poor. Blessed are you who are now hungry. Blessed are you who are now weeping or sorrowful. Blessed are you who are now hated. It distinguishes the fact that we live in a broken place. And interesting enough, that God doesn't honor the shiny, the cleaned up, the elbow greased. What he says is the Academy Award or the Pulitzer Prize goes to those poor, broken ragamuffin folks. The Pulitzer Prize goes to those who hunger and thirst. Those who are weeping because life is sorrowful and breaking you. The Academy Award goes to you, outcast. Those of you who've been felt hate, who've been persecuted. Because then you will be a kingdom dweller. Then you will be satisfied. Your hunger and your thirst will finally be satisfied. Your sorrow will be turned to joy, and you will be joyful. Joyful. And you will be called sons and daughters of the King. And you will inherit the kingdom. And that's his promise. Now there's trouble. Then there's victory. Now there's cancer. Then there's healing. Now there's divorce. Then we're married to the King forever. Now it's temporal. Then is eternity. And so love distinguishes now from then. But the thing I want to hear in the text, so Jesus does all that, and people are shaken, because they expected to hear how to live well, say it well, and live right. They expected that they could bring their suits and their ties to the king, and he would say, "You're dressed well. You look good. You said that perfectly." And that isn't what Jesus said. Matter of fact, some folks maybe felt like Jesus turned his back on those who were living the good life and the right life and saying it well. And he turned his back towards those who were enemies of the kingdom, enemies of the gospel, enemies of religion. Jesus turned to the prostitute, the tax collectors, the panhandlers, the thugs, and he said, "Blessed." And he looked at the religious teachers and said, "You got yours now. That's all you're getting. You happy now? Good. You wealthy now? Good. You satisfied now? Good. Because that's all you're getting." And I think people in the crowd was like, "We came in, this dude's a freak, man." I didn't expect to hear this message. So then after he does that, he asked this interesting question. He said, "For those who are willing to listen." Love asks, "Are you willing?" Love asks you. Love always asks, "Are you willing to listen?" Because what Jesus is about to lay out in terms of how we really are supposed to love is radical. And only those with ears that are sensitive to spiritual things will be able to listen. Not only listen, in Matthew 11:15 he says, "Those who have ears, let them hear." Those who have ears, let them hear. Today I'm going to ask you to hear something, to listen, that will turn your ethic about love on its head. That's what Jesus was about to say. Listen. Because love asks you to listen. Love will also ask you to choose. Love will ask you to choose some things. When Jesus says that crazy thing about turn your cheek, love asks you to choose. When Jesus says, love your enemy, Jesus asks you to choose. What's he asking us to choose? He's not asking us to choose not to feel the pain that's been inflicted by our enemies. He's not asking us not to do something, but he is asking us to choose to do something. And to do something that's extraordinary. Something that's unconventional. Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to choose? The other thing that he promises is that love will give you the ability to listen and to choose. Because see, the ability to listen and the ability to choose isn't because I'm so smart or I have a strong will. It's because my heart's open. The Spirit gets inside and the Spirit says, hey, JC, knucklehead, but listen to this. Hey, JC, here's your chance. You could choose your way or you could choose my way. And love will compel me to choose love. Love asks, are you willing to act? See, love is not about passivity. Love is not just sitting. Somebody said, who was it? Jody said that she was sitting for 6 hours yesterday. She got, what was that you called it? Where's she at? She called it chair butt, something like that. Just sitting. But love asks you to choose. Love asks you to listen, and love asks you to act. Love is calling you to do something. Not just think about it. Love may ask you to say something, not just think about it. Love may ask you to give something, not just think about it. In the drama, somehow love compelled this mom to give the boy who killed her son a place in her house. There are stories like that. I was reading a story about a young man who goes around speaking. And in this story, this young man was driving drunk in Iowa, I think, and killed a girl in the car with him. And she was a friend, but he was clearly out of control. And he killed this girl, and he lived. And he was scared to go to the funeral, he tells the story. And when he walked in the funeral, into the church where the funeral was, guess who greeted him? The girl's dad. Love does that. Love calls you to act. Calls you to act. Love pursues more than the physically and culturally attractive. See, we live in this culture where TV and radio and the internet dictates to us what love should look like. Right? You know, some stacked, tanned young man who's got a V. My V is gone. Mine's inverted now. A V, right? You know, cut and chiseled with, you know, nice little, you know, hair growing and shaped nicely. That's beautiful. Or when I grew up, it was Commodore said she's a brick house, 36, 24, 36. You know, that's what the world sells us. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. But love asks us to pursue something broader than what we perceive to be as physically or culturally attractive or economically attractive. See, in this house where Jay's talking about debt, you know, the world defines what's lovely, and lovely means you're $38,000 in debt. Because the world defines what love should look like. A good home should be 2 stories, 4 bedrooms, a basement with a pool table, and 200 acres for the backyard. The world says that. You know what's interesting is that instead of finding out what the king wants, we chase what the world presents us as lovely. Whether it's internally changing our package, externally changing our package, or or chasing the car or the house. But love says there's something bigger than what's physically and culturally attractive. Love also pursues more than the lovables, those near and dear to us. See, the Bible in this passage, Jesus says something really interesting. He says, you love your wife? That's easy, dude. You love your kid? You're supposed to. Even the pagans love their kids. Show me something. That ain't nothing. You love your mom and your dad? That's easy. Then he's going to point us to something else that I find, maybe I'm the only weird one here, but I find what he's going to point me to extremely difficult. But he says, love is broader and bigger than what we see as attractive and what we find near and dear to us. Love pursues broader than those 2 things. Love chases the unlovable. Love chases the ugly. Love chases even its enemies. Did you hear that? I'm reading this passage, and he says, if you have ears, listen. And I'm thinking, okay, so I was last night and Monday and Friday and Wednesday, started Tuesday. I'm saying the first thing that was in my head was, why does he say, if you're willing to listen? Now he's finna say something really crazy to us. He didn't say, here's how you love your wife. Here's a better way to encourage your kids. First thing out of his mouth is, love loves its enemies. Love loves the ugly folks. Love loves the unlovables. Now, here's the interesting thing. That could be them, or it could be the unlovely, ugly enemy inside. See, if I have you all stand up, which I could do, you'd all have to admit that at some point you were unlovable by God according to standard of performance. You were ugly according to God. And worst of all, if you're not for God, guess what? You're his enemy. And at some point in your life, we've all been on the enemy side of things. Amen? Well, I got one out there. Don't sleep on me. Okay? You got to hear this. So at some point, now, here's the problem. We come into the kingdom, we come under grace. Guess what? I'm still looking at some ugly people, man. I'm still looking at some unlovables. Y'all got it perfumed up. I got mine perfumed up and dressed up nice. But it's still ugly inside. It's still unlovable inside. And at times, I still function like an enemy of God. Now, I'm thinking if I do that, maybe one or two of you guys operate that way. Huh? Don't look at me because I'm looking at you. I see some heads looking. Okay? But God chooses to love those kinds of folks. So he says to us this. If you're in this room, you have been drawn here by God. And you are in the process, whether you're 3 or 63, you are in the process of being turned into kingdom dwellers. And kingdom dwellers there are some requirements. Some requirements. The first requirement is that God wants you to understand that you're his kid, that you're children of the king. Now, interesting enough, God doesn't look at you and go, I don't see the ugly, I don't see the unlovable, I don't see that you were my enemy. He says, I adopt this kid, that kid, that kid, that kid. Yeah, you was running this way, cussing God, I want you. And he says, I want you to be my kid. Not I want you to be my chump, come work for me, and my servant, come work for me. I want you to be my kid. I got a room for you in my house. You can eat my food and watch my TV and look at my TiVo. Whatever it is you got. God's saying, come and get it. Some of you are operating, and there are times I operate like I'm not his kid. There's nothing you can do to get yourself separated from the love of God. Love says you're my kid. There's nothing you can do about it. Once you're in, you can't get out. And so understand that you're kids of the king. I'll give you an example. When I was through sixth grade to 8th grade, I met a guy. I've never told this story before because I just thought about it this morning because I was asking God, what am I going to start? I need an illustration. And I heard, tell him about Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, we called him Mr. G. Mr. G was my basketball coach. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, go to a Catholic school, no dad. Mr. G was a church-going cat who volunteered his time to coach knuckleheads, straight up knuckleheads, who wasn't trying to listen to him, but he was he was about this tall, little dude, Spanish dude, you know. Mr. G used to invite me over to his house before basketball practice and give me authentic Spanish tortillas that were about this thick, that taste like bread. Y'all know nothing about that, though. Y'all know nothing about that. It was awesome. Miss Gonzalez used to call me son. And in 5th grade, 6th grade, I started liking that we had a coach change. And me and the coach in 5th grade had some beef. Because he wanted to play his son, and I wanted to play, and I thought I was better than his son, and blah, 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 blah. Mr. G came, and he said, we're gonna start this all over, and the hardest workers get to play. And he said, I'm coming in with some values. Here's my expectation of you young men, he called us. And he said, I expect you to be respectful on the court. Because when we go out from this inner city little neighborhood in the ghetto, in the projects, they expect us to act like that. And he said, I ain't bringing no team that acts like they come from the projects. It's like, dang, Mr. G, you're a little dude, but you tough, man. And then he ran us to death, right? But I'm telling you, over 3 years, I started secretly thinking my last name was Gonzalez. Jaime Gonzalez. That's my name now. Jaime Gonzalez. Because I wanted that dude as my dad. I tried to be over. I made friends with his son and Danny and his older brothers, and they took care of me. I told a story about getting jumped one day, and Danny Gonzalez, his older brother, stood up for me. They brought me into their family. And I really felt like a Gonzalez kid. And you know what happened? Because this guy functioned as my dad, like he was a coach, I started to change. I started to give up some of my attitude. I started wanting to work hard. I started to do things that I thought I couldn't do because Mr. G said I could do it. By the time I was 8th grade, Mr. G said when I was 6th grade, you're going to be one of the best ball players to graduate from here. I'm like, man, I'm a scrub. What happened in 8th grade? I was one of the best ball players that came out of Sacred Heart. Mr. G. I was his kid. He didn't know that, though. I didn't tell him ever I wanted to be Gonzalez. And he quietly did his thing. Quietly did his thing. And when it came time for honors for coaches and stuff, he wasn't there. But this guy gave it up for us. You know what? If Mr. G can do that, that's just this much of what God can do. And God's saying, you are his child. He gave up his son to make that possible. It wasn't cheap and it wasn't free. We get it freely, but it cost him. Do you want to be his kid? Secondly, we need to understand that we will be compelled to represent the King. See, when you start to understand that the God that has adopted you really does love you, and he is not giving you the servant's quarters, that he actually has a bedroom for you and a nice bed and a place for you, and your desires matter to him, and that he loves you and that he's friendly and encouraging, something happens on the inside. And like I did for Mr. Gonzalez, I started to represent Gonzalez. I started to want to be. My ain'ts and can'ts turned into wants. And I can't tell you how that happened. I didn't tell you, I'm going to tell you this, I didn't put it on. I didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to be one of the best players Mr. Gonzalez ever coached. It just happened over time. And what happens is when you become a child of the King, the Spirit comes inside and begins to change you. And you know what? You start to represent Jesus. Whether you know it or not, you start to act loving. See, because love comes out of this gratitude. You begin to give people the gift that was given to you. That's just what happens. That's what happens. So love requires that you understand you're children of the King. And that love also requires that you understand that you will be compelled from the inside to begin to act like, walk like, smell like, look like Jesus. Now, you'll be compelled to do what? So love does. What does love do? Love does good, it says. Love does good to its enemies. Now, let me define good for you, because I didn't put it on the overhead. Good is speaking and acting in ways that brings about the highest good, the highest value that you could think about for another person. And God's going to compel you to love your enemies, love people that give you beef in a way that's good. And good is doing those things that will at least create opportunities for this person to experience the highest. Okay? Good is this. Doing those things that say your relationship with the Creator is more important than my relationship with you. Do you hear what I'm saying? Good is doing those things for your enemies that says, you know what, you need to know God. And I don't care about your relationship with me. And sometimes you're going to do good for your enemies. But here's another thing. I was reading this text and I was thinking, you know what? Sometimes my enemies live in my house. Does that happen to you? If I hear some laughter, then I know I'm on it. Yeah? Sometimes my enemy's in my house. Sometimes my enemy's in the mirror. Sometimes I need to do good to those who are near and dear as if they were. Sometimes I need to do good. I need to hold their highest value in front of them. And sometimes I need to point them, instead of having them answer to me, I need to point them and think about what the Creator's doing in their life and do the good thing for them. But also there'll be people who persecute and challenge you, and love does good to them. Now, bold love is an interesting thing. Let me read for you, because I'm not talking about wimpy. See, I grew up in the hood, and Christians, we used to laugh at them because we thought they was wimpy, you know. And now I'm finding out them old soft Christians I thought was in my neighborhood, they're some of the strongest people, because I couldn't understand why they would come in my neighborhood, walk around and talk about Jesus when they could get shot. What's up with that? Why are you going to come around? And a lot of them were white. Why are you going to come in my neighborhood, all black, knowing we don't like white people, and try to be friendly with us? Because love does that. Love does that. Right? Love will compel you to go places you normally don't go or aren't even comfortable to enter into. Because love will call you to the enemy's territory. You with me on that? Dan Allender wrote this. He said in his book, Bold Love, love will unnerve, offend, disturb, and even hurt those being loved. Unnerve, offend, disturb, and even hurt those who are being loved. See, the problem is that doing good is sometimes painful. Doing good sometimes is painful. Sometimes doing good is saying the truth, and saying the truth that's painful. Sometimes doing good is leaving somebody in their pain instead of rescuing them, because that's the good thing for them. That's going to put them closer to the Creator. God says do good. Do good. Sometimes doing good is having a confrontation. Sometimes doing good is loud. Sometimes doing good means I have to communicate to you in a way that you will listen to me. Sometimes doing good is creating space and letting people go. I have to learn that in my own life. That's the good thing. It's a good thing. Love also says, Scripture says, love blesses. Love blesses. So, Jesus said, pray for your enemies that they would be happy. Now, I'm going to define happy. Happy isn't happy in that context according to the world happy. It's not that kind of happy. Happy is the kind of happy that comes when they come to understand who the Creator is. Happy is what happens when they're living foul and they get found out by love, and they have an encounter with love. And God calls that a blessing. So you pray blessings upon the people who curse you. You ask. See, because the cursing, you used to curse. You used to talk bad about people and talk bad about God. Maybe that still happens. I still, gripe and moan. That's not foreign, but we act like it is when it's coming at us. I was going to tell a story about Lau. Is Lau here? Is the Coomers here? Oh, I see two of them. He's teaching. Oh, I can't tell him without him here because that would be disrespectful. But he was refereeing yesterday, and he had to catch some grief from one of the coaches on the Lincoln team. I was going to tell a story, but anyway. But he had to handle the grief, because that's what love does. Love says, I want blessings for you. And the blessing first starts with them coming to understand that they're a mess. And then secondly, coming to understand that there's somebody that can help them out of the mess. And someone that can make their life. But see, first of all, I have to know, when I pray blessings, one of my blessings is praying that people understand that the bad news really is bad news. Then praying that they understand the good news. So, love does that. Love blesses. And blessing is different. I'm not blessing in the kingdom's different. But love also prays on behalf. So, if I'm a sheep and I know what it's like to be stupid. Now, I ain't talking about none of y'all. I'm just talking about me. Okay? I know what it's like to be stupid and be bad on the edge. Right? Then I understand when somebody acts stupid. And love says, Lord, oh, he's just like me. So could you do what you did for him for me? Because it's coming in my direction. And part of me wants, I can't do that no more. Right? But love says, I understand. I don't like what I'm getting. Love doesn't say you shouldn't feel that stuff. But love does say, do something instead of go contrary to your sinful nature. And I'll give you a way to do that. So love says, pray. And pray that this kid or this young man or this woman or whatever it is that's beseeching you is blessed. And then pray on their behalf. Encourage them. So encourage your enemy. And you do that through prayer. Because the truth is, if you are in the kingdom, to your enemy you smell like death. Anybody ever been around somebody you stink? Like, oh man, you need to go take a bath, dude. See, around the enemy, we smell like death. Around other people who know stuff, we smell like a fragrance. I met a guy once in my treatment unit. His name was Roger Fredrickson. I didn't know who he was. He came to our treatment unit because he was on the board. And when I'm working in a secular counseling center, I'm trying to keep my Christianity on the down low. I don't want nobody knowing that. Roger Fredrickson shakes my hand. So how you doing? This is Roger Fredrickson. I heard about who he is. I'm like, whoa, this is Roger, man. I'm like 25, 26. Shake his hand. And he looks me in the eye. And he says, you know, don't you? I said, what, man? What you talking about? He said, you one of us, ain't you? I'm like, dude, how you know that? I'm trying to keep it down here. He said, he said, you one of us, ain't you? I said, what you mean? He said, you're a Christian, ain't you? I said, yeah, man. I try to walk away. And I'm thinking, how did he know that? Why? Because the fragrance to those who know smells good. But to those who don't know, your fragrance brings wrath because it stinks. People either want to get away from you or bust you. They don't understand where you're coming from. God calls us then to love and encourage that person. Say, you know what, I understand. Because I've been there. See, now love implies that we've been there. And lastly, love asks you to turn the other cheek. Now, there's a bunch of debate about this. The kind of love that Jesus is talking about here doesn't override those situations. He's not asking you in a harmful, abusive situation to do this. He's not asking you to have somebody who's rolling over you to say, just keep rolling over me in the name of Jesus. No. But he is asking you to not always take the advantage, not always take the escape route, and not always use your will. Not always using muscle, not always using your cunning intellect. Why? Because revenge isn't the way. Right? So he is telling us, turn your cheek. Somebody wants something, then the idea was, if they want my coat, I give them my coat and my shirt. Now, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happens. I can tell you an example of a story that it did happen to me, and I was like, whoa. I'm thinking, when I became a Christian, and I've been a Christian about a year, and when I was coming up, the coveted pair of jeans weren't FUBU, they were Levi's, straight leg. And in my neighborhood, you put a crease so sharp you could cut stuff with it. And I used to have like 10 pair of them. I kept them because I could go to Yellow Front and get them like for $10 and, crease them up, wash them in stacks. And we used to go to the laundromat, me and my cousin. And I went to the laundromat this time. And I washed these jeans, brand new. I got me 5 brand new pair plus the other 20 pair I had. We washed them up. And I grabbed all of them except for the new ones and put them in the bag, but I didn't know it. And when I got home, my cousin was like, dude, your new jeans, where are they? Like, I thought I put them in the bag. And we went back. Now, you need to know me. Before I covered those jeans, I've been tearing up stuff to look for them. We go back, and I can't find them. And I know something's weird in me because you know what came out of my mouth? This was not planned. I said to my cousin, I hope whoever took them can use them. Now, my cousin who knows me, he said, Jay, you've been acting stupid the whole time you've been back from school. What's wrong? I said, what? He said, do you understand what you just said? I said, what? I hadn't even thought about it. He said, you just bought 5 brand new pairs of jeans and somebody just stole them. And you said, I hope they needed them. And I hope it does them well. We got to talk. And here we had a conversation. I had been keeping it secret and been acting weird apparently. And he said, what's going on? And I got a chance to share with my cousin the change in my life. But it wasn't something that I thought about. It just popped out of me. So I want to invite you to understand what love does. Love is good to its enemies. It blesses its enemies. It prays for them on their behalf. And it turns the other cheek. But remember now, bold love isn't about tolerating abuse. It isn't about that. Right? It isn't about being in a violent situation and thinking you have to take that. But it is about sometimes turning the other cheek, sometimes giving. Teaches about what we covet. See, sometimes when I give you my shirt, people think that's weird. What is that about, man? I just took you. You said you got something else here. You can have this. Don't you want that? Aren't you going to fight me for that? No, it's not important. See, love says this is what's important. I got a question for you. Jesus asked at the beginning, are you willing to listen? Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to choose? Sometimes going contrary to the design. And are you willing to act? Because love does. I'm going to pray, and then I stole the title of the song from a song I listen to, a little hip hop. So I'm going to play rather than have everybody come up. I'm going to have these guys play it as you're going out. But I want to pray and let you go. You can listen to the real song, the song called Love Does. Dear Father, I just want to say thank you for what you do. Thank you for being love to me and to the folks here. Thank you for welcoming us into your family. Thank you for calling us your children. Thank you for giving us your spirit. Thank you for our enemies. Give us the opportunity to do good, to bless, to pray on their behalf, to turn the other cheek. Give us the courage to do and represent you in our day-to-day lives. Give us the courage to also represent you in our relationships with people that are near and dear to us, and also those that may even be enemies to the kingdom. In your precious name we pray. Amen.